just any writer, he writes fiction. So basically his job is to lie for a living. I don't know. That would raise some questions straight off the bat. So that's what I think about him. I mean, as a character, he just endlessly fascinates me because I just think that I think we don't get enough clear views, clear peeks at the interiority of certain kinds of men. You know? A lot of boys grow up and they know better than to let anyone look inside their heart. Most of us can fall in love with boys, live with them their whole lives, and you have never been even let past the front door of their soul. And I think for me, part of the task of Junior as a character has been that he knows in his heart that he can never have intimacy unless he lets somebody into the door of his heart. And part of his project is his desire to open that door, but his unwillingness, his inability to do it. And I think that's part of his whole complexity, why he's often incredibly honest, because he's like, I want you to know, but also very deceptive, because down deep, he has that boy training, which is, don't show anybody who you really are.
And so through Junior, we come to know Oscar. And my question about getting a handle on who Oscar is relates to what you just said, because we can't know anything more than what Junior tells us. And at times, it seemed to me like we were meant to identify with Oscar. At other times, Junior is so funny in the way he talks about him, it seems like we're meant to laugh at Oscar. Maybe sometimes we're meant to pity Oscar. How did you want to position us as readers in relation to Oscar's plight, given that it's Junior who's telling us about him?
There is some moment in this book, again, you guys have to understand, like, I'm just like a super nerd, yo. You know, I didn't start my life that way, I mean, but shit, that's what I like. That became something that I like, that was the end, what I love to be. And so when I kind of wrote Oscar Wilde, I kind of started from a nerd place. And I started from a scene that most people don't even pay attention to, because most people don't even get to the fucking end of the book. You know? But at the end of the book, there's this moment where Lola, the sister, Junior's girlfriend of his dreams, she has a daughter named Isis. And for me, as someone of African descent on both sides of my family, yeah, I don't care what the fuck you heard about Dominicans, they black. On both sides of my family, for me, think, how do we write about our history when 99% of it is lost? How do we write about people who are gone from us and we have no access to them? And so, Isis is a very interesting figure at the mythic level. Because when we know who Isis is, we understand what I was trying to get at metaphorically to position the reader. I wanted the reader to be like Isis. And if you remember the mythic figure of Isis, her lover brother, Osiris, is murdered and chopped up by Set. Yeah, this is in the myths, the Egyptian myths. Set scatters the pieces of Osiris. And what Isis does is she finds the pieces of her lover brother and puts them back together, but one piece is missing. And I wanted everybody who's a reader to be like Isis. You've got to look into this book, find the pieces of Oscar, reassemble it, but with the knowledge that there's always going to be a piece missing. And that, to me, is the history of the African diaspora in the New World. It's the history of the Dominican diaspora. It says no matter how much we try, there's always a part of us that has been lost and destroyed and dead. And so I think that our relationship with Junior is a relationship with somebody who's trying to show us different pieces in different orders. But it's important for us to take responsibility in the book and assemble Oscar in our own way. And assemble this family in our own way. So that's what I think.
It's interesting to hear you talk about the reading process as assembling, reassembling. I think of this book like a kind of a mosaic, a very gorgeous, rich mosaic, and it's striking how challenging the structure of the book is. And I wonder if you could speak to that issue. Did you know from the outset that this was the way the book needed to be organized, that it needed, for example, to regress back in time, that it needed to shift points of view? How did that come about?
Look, I just think, you gotta understand, I grew up in a time where there wasn't that many books in the U.S. by Dominican writers, right? Like, I grew up with exactly none. Yeah. And so, other books came out, but when I was writing Oscar Wilde, in my mind, I was thinking, this book has to stand in for a bunch of books.